Would you like to be able to develop in real life the exact same personality as Gaara? Here's how to do it. As I always say, our favorite characters say more about us than we think. So if your favorite character is Gaara, you can probably replicate his distinctive traits in your daily life to turn them into strengths of your personality. Disclaimer: this video contains spoilers unavoidably. Also, I wanted to start by saying that among the few animes I've seen to date, Gaara's story has been one of the saddest backstories witnessed. But despite this, he has had the most significant character development in the entire Naruto storyline, and it is precisely because of this that categorizing and attributing positive or negative traits to him made it a little more difficult for me. So this video will be freer than usual, because Gaara has a rather complex personality that deserves to be analyzed in a different way. Gaara, in fact, is an initially toxic INFP, the mediator, and belongs to the category of the introverted. Many INFPs grow up constantly fearing that everyone will eventually get tired of them and abandon them just for being different. Fundamentally, INFPs have the characteristic trait of having thought currents that are difficult for others to understand. Therefore, feeling strongly rejected, they start to pretend, like Gaara, to be cold and indifferent, behaving as if they didn't care about anything or anyone, and develop, like him, a completely toxic personality. Indeed, Gaara was expressly told at a very young age that he did not deserve love, and what he felt throughout his life was a profound sense of inner loneliness. His mother died giving him life. The village feared him for his tremendous strength. His brothers avoided and despised him, so everything around him always confirmed the fact that Gaara was not worthy of being loved. Deep loneliness in his life made him become a sadist. When an INFP-type individual, but generally anyone who has suffered heavy traumas, doesn't know who they truly are and has a strong identity crisis, this becomes a major problem for them. The first thing they do is isolate themselves completely. But Gaara developed the toxic INFP trait, namely, after all the traumas suffered and feeling hated and despised by everyone because he wasn't understood, Gaara inevitably ends up showing everyone around him what it truly means to be a monster. After his encounter with Naruto, Gaara becomes the typical INFP, incapable of judging the beliefs, lifestyle, or decisions of others. He prefers compassion over criticism and always feels immense empathy for those who have made mistakes, because he himself has made them and bears all the consequences. For example, during the 5-Cage Summit, when Gaara meets Sasuke, he did not judge or blame him. On the contrary, Gaara put himself in Sasuke's shoes, making him understand that he too had experienced the same thing and that there was still hope for redemption for him. In addition to this, Gaara becomes an extremely protective character, behaving exactly the opposite of how he was treated throughout his entire childhood. Despite being depicted as a ruthless villain, which he was initially, Gaara is probably the character who demonstrates the most love for people throughout Naruto, despite always receiving little. And this shows his immense empathy and kindness. Furthermore, Gaara is a highly introspective character. The beauty of an INFP like Gaara is that he always asks himself 1,000 questions about how he is leading his life and how to improve it. So, as Gaara progresses in the story, he begins to gain deep self-awareness, becoming a better character and managing to become one of the most loved characters in Naruto for this trait. His thoughts are not just simple paranoias or senseless mental trips that lead nowhere. They are true reflections that put him in a position to always become a better person regardless of circumstances. So, how can you replicate Gaara's personality in your life? 3 tips. Number 1. There is no INFP in the world who has never felt deep loneliness within themselves at some level. There are personalities that more than others will tend to feel it because they have completely different thought flows, which probably makes them strange to the rest of the people and therefore exclude them. This is why they feel loneliness as Gaara did. The problem is waiting in solitude, hoping that others will always take the first step to make us feel less alone, ultimately still ending up there. Take steps towards people to prevent your loneliness from becoming so burdensome to live with. Number 2. You don't simply feel others' emotions, you deeply experience them on your skin. This is why, even though Gaara was initially ruthless and potentially heartless, he managed to become one of the most protective characters in Naruto. Usually, people who have healed from heavy traumas and deep loneliness, if they somehow overcome all this, will have a constant need to protect others from experiencing the same traumas they themselves have suffered. However, be careful not to take other people's problems as your own, completely nullifying yourself and your desires. People in real life are not as grateful as they are in anime, so choose well to whom you give your special treatments and whom to avoid. Number 3. Gaara somehow longed to be accepted, but deep down, especially at the beginning, he always behaved as he thought was best for himself and to protect himself from disappointments. The problem for those with personalities similar to his is that they have this enormous need for acceptance, but in this case, it would be necessary to learn to live a little like he did before his character development. Even though initially he was hostile and ruthless, sometimes a bit of healthy selfishness will make you live better and not take responsibilities that aren't yours. Which other character would you like to see in the next video? Tell me in the comments.